Hi, this is Melissa. I'm an MD PhD student, and we're continuing our little series on the ABS for your OMSAS application. So, same special thanks and disclosures. Thanks to the community of support. Be sure to follow them on their social media and also check out their website. Thanks again to Danny, who reviewed the content for all these videos and was invaluable in that. Also, personal disclosures in that I have never held a formal role evaluating medical students for the purposes of admission. So, whatever I say is just my opinion. It doesn't reflect the actual admission process. And again, always be sure to check the current application cycle requirements. Hopefully, fingers crossed, none of this content's outdated, but you never know. So, just be sure to double check. And same principle as before. This presentation will have lots of text, but it's with the intention that you can pause the video and absorb and read things thoroughly that way. Okay, so part 2 is really just more ABS tips. This is just a reminder of what the ABS looks like. You have entries and they're going to fall under different categories like employment, volunteer, extracurricular, awards, research. And then you're going to be expected to go into detail about each experience in terms of when you did it, where you did it, who can confirm that you did it, how much work did you put in, what did you do in that role, kind of thing. And we're going to continue a little bit more about what to include in your ABS, because there might be an element that might go underappreciated if you're just not aware of medicine. So it comes down to, in every entry that you do the ABS, you're going to describe your responsibilities or what you learn. And what's so important is to incorporate what we call CanMeds roles. And for context, there's a regulatory body that oversees medical education of Canadian specialists, and they're called the Royal College. And basically, what they've developed is this framework called CanMeds. And on the website, it reads, CanMeds is a framework that identifies and describes the abilities physicians require to effectively meet the healthcare needs of the people they serve. These abilities are grouped thematically under 7 roles. A competent physician seamlessly integrates the competencies of all 7 CanMeds roles. And the point is that we always say try to include CanMeds in your app because you can imagine these are qualities that a physician should have. But if you as an applicant already have these roles, it kind of means you're likely going to be an excellent medical student and subsequent doctor. So in terms of what the roles actually are, they're depicted in this, to us, it's like a famous diagram. But it's, you have professional, communicator, collaborator, leader, health advocate, scholar. The 7th one is a medical expert, but that's not as relevant for you because this is more like when you're already a physician or a trainee in medicine and you're really working towards being that medical expert. So your focus should really be as a med school applicant, the surrounding 6, because that's what you want to highlight. I will also add to make sure to look at the official CanMeds website for more details on the listed roles. So these are really umbrella terms, these 6 here. But when you go on the website, they actually have very detailed descriptions as to what should be under each category. Because I can imagine something like scholar, for example, that one might be a little bit confusing. Kind of to put it briefly, scholar is kind of like this research / teaching and mentorship / lifelong learning role. So again, a lot of stuff could qualify under that. And on the note of scholar, my advice too when doing this is to try to be a little subtle when incorporating CanMeds rules. And by subtle, I just mean use language that comes naturally to you. So things like communicator, collaborator, leader, advocate, even maybe not so much health advocate, but just advocate. It's fine. But I can imagine the word scholar might be a little bit iffy for people to use. Um, Even myself and my peers, as much as we love research, we don't really call ourselves scholar unless someone holds like an official, Rhodes Scholar title from a scholarship, right? So, yeah, you might just want to dance around the term a little bit for scholar, but everything else, is fair game probably. And then also just kind of a brief fun aside and an Ottawa plug. Because I mentioned the Royal College, And actually, their headquarters is in Ottawa. And it's usually not open to the public, but one time they participated in Ottawa's Doors Open, where a lot of buildings for free allow the public to enter and roam around. So they allowed us in. And if in a post COVID world you're ever in town and they happen to open their doors to the public again, and if you like, medicine, uh, history, nice buildings, would 100% recommend visiting the Royal College. It's really nice, really fun. And basically, you won't really get to see it unless you work for them or you're a very stressed out medical resident, which is where they write their exams in this room here. So yeah, I would highly recommend stopping by if you can. So what to include in the ABS? Furthermore on the CanMed stuff. So I said incorporate the CanMeds rules. Here's a diagram again as a reminder. And then also there's some other buzz phrases to think about, especially if you're trying to vary up your descriptions, right? Like you're stuck on using communicator again and again and again, and you want to mix it up. Here's some options that I tend to recommend to mentees. I will admit though, a lot of these I think are actually in the CanMeds website. If you just happen to, click on a certain role and read more about it, you'll probably come across a bunch of these again. But as a reminder, you can include things like conflict management and problem solving, creativity, flexibility, or adjusting to individual needs, engaging, motivating others, creating change, resiliency, dedication, commitment, reliability, empathy, maintaining confidentiality, being respectful, provide feedback, especially in a teaching or mentoring role, mention any skills that you learned or developed in a certain activity, always mention leadership when possible. And then if you'd like, you can quantify, certain things where you can. So for example, you led a team of 7 people, you raised this amount of money, you saw a change by this amount in membership, things like that. So I always mention variety. And it kind of comes up again in that you just want to be smart in terms of how you describe your activities. So I use communication just because it's such low hanging fruit and it's so common. Anything you do, you can probably highlight communication skills and across the board, right? Whether it's volunteer, employment, extracurricular, or research, or an award you won, you can probably highlight communication skills. But just because you can choose to highlight communication skills doesn't mean you have to for every single activity. So my example here is if you have, say, 5 activities where communication skills were demonstrated, you may decide you only want to highlight that skill for maybe a fraction of them. And then for the rest of them, highlight something different. And then by doing that, again, you're showing that you're a well rounded individual. Just a general advice for the ABS tube is that you want to sell yourself, but of course be honest. So this is a application for professional school. We always talk about integrity. So again, be honest. Don't oversell yourself in that sense. Um, and even just not from an integrity point of view, but just from a self-preservation point of view, the ABS can often come up in interviews. So you want to be honest because when they ask about your activities during the interview, you want to be able to naturally, talk about that experience without being caught in a lie. And then it's also really helpful in general to go through the exercise of reflecting on each ABS experience. Um, this will also help for your essays and your interviews. So for every activity you write down for the ABS, think a little bit further in terms of what that experience was like, if anything interesting happened, how you grew from it. So some other considerations. Again, I know I hammer this idea of variety, but it's so important because at the end of the day, you have to think about who's reading your app. It's often medical students or physicians. They're really reading this at the end of the day or during whatever breaks it can get. So you just want to keep them engaged. If you're kind of droning on and on about the same things, you're going to bore them, and that might not reflect positively on your app. And then again, variety is good because it also showcases kind of your best multifaceted self. It shows that you're well rounded. And to kind of achieve this variety, you're going to try to look and find this balance of combining some activities, like I mentioned in the previous video, versus breaking things down in separate entries. So at the end of the day, when you've done your ABS, you really should do a few, from beginning to end read throughs. and critically think, does anything come across as filler? Because if it's filler, you're running the risk of being repetitive or you're including irrelevant things. Or does it feel like you have too few entries somewhere? And are you possibly underselling yourself then? So think deeply about that. And then this is a tagline that I wish I could take credit for, but this is pure Danny, where he wrote, "Concise is nice." And it's so true. And it's such a short and sweet tagline, so I had to include it in the PowerPoint itself. So, when you think about the ABS, it's really like a teaser of your thought process, maturity, and growth, because they'll further evaluate this either through the essays, if the school wants it, or through your interview later on. So, again, you're trying to give them a taste of what you are like as a person. Don't worry too much if your activities are not closely related to medicine. Um, in my opinion, as long as an activity had meaning to you and you were engaged and you grew from that experience, that is worthwhile to put in the app. And then a note on verifiers. Try to get in touch with them early just because you need to reach out to them and then also collect their contact information. So, contact information usually being like phone number, work address. I don't know if they'll ask for email too. And then an important note too for verifiers is that friends and family should not be verifiers, um, just from a professional standpoint. Now, using friends may be a little bit unavoidable for the student groups you're part of. But in those cases, try to pick someone you have a professional relationship with, or at least, give the person a heads up saying that this is going to be for medical school applications. So if they call you, just focus on the fact that we've interacted in this space in terms of the, extracurricular activity, for example. When contacting verifiers, you may also choose to disclose your descriptions or the number of hours you're going to submit in your app out of courtesy. So I will admit that when I was applying for medicine, I actually did not do this tip where, I disclosed the description or the number of hours. But the reason I brought this up is because when the tables turned and I became a verifier, I found myself asking this information from people. Um, really just because I didn't want to sabotage anyone's app because of my poor memory. So I just wanted to know what they were writing, trusting in it, and then going forward with that if I was ever contacted. So that's, again, another video on some more tips for the ABS. Next video, we're going to even further break things down and talk about, for each section and for each category, what can you write in your app? Again, really for those, if you never done the app and you have no idea what you're going to write, this will give you a bit of a flavor for one approach to the app that may work for you. So again, with that, be sure to check out community support, and we'll see you next time.